The tree didn't just tip, it revealed who was really pulling the strings in our family. When my stepmother laughed and slapped me, my father told me to clean it up. I did. Just not the way they expected. By the time the needles were swept, I had started a quiet war that would end with handcuffs, a burning secret ledger, and a will read out loud in a room full of enemies who finally learned my name. My name is Elena March. I am 32 years old, and I am the product operations lead for Helix Ortho Systems. My job is to find the single point of failure in a titanium hip replacement or a spinal fusion cage before it finds its way into a human body. I spend 10 hours a day stress testing components, running failure analysis, and documenting material fatigue. I am very, very good at seeing the microscopic crack before it becomes a catastrophic break. This skill is utterly useless in my father's house. I'm back in Winter Ridge, Vermont, for an early December gathering. The town hasn't committed to snow yet. The air is just cold and wet, a damp, gray chill that seeps into your coat and settles in your bones. The gathering was Lorraine's idea. Everything is Lorraine's idea now. The house still smells of cedar, a sharp, clean scent that defined the first 2 decades of my life, but it's muted, buried under an aggressive layer of plug-in air fresheners, vanilla bean and spiced cinnamon, so thick you can almost taste the chemicals. It's the scent of tactical erasure. My father, Graham March, opens the door, but he seems startled to see me, as if my arrival date was a detail he'd misplaced. Before he can speak, Lorraine is there, her hand landing on his forearm, steering him like a piece of furniture. "Elena, darling, you made it." Her voice is a bright, brittle thing, all polished surfaces. "We were so worried about the roads, weren't we, Graham?" "The roads, yes," my father echoes, his gaze distant. I step forward to hug him. His frame feels smaller than I remember, his flannel shirt hanging loose. He gives me a brief, papery squeeze, but his eyes are already flicking over my shoulder, checking Lorraine's expression. The choreography has begun. I am a guest. Lorraine takes my coat, her fingers quick, her collection of gold rings clicking against the zipper. "Let's get you settled. Everyone is so excited to see you." I clock the tells. It's the old reflex from my job. The failure analysis. Lorraine's laugh, which she uses to punctuate every other sentence, is a half octave too high, a flashing sound designed to blind and distract. My father's eyes, which used to hold the entire room with a quiet, confident authority, now just track Lorraine. He waits for her cues. Does he speak now? Does he offer a drink? He's an actor in his own home, and he's forgotten all his lines. And then there is the mantle. The mantle is the new regime's scoreboard. It's crowded, shoulder to shoulder, with heavy ornate silver frames. Lorraine's son from her first marriage, smiling in a cap and gown. Lorraine's sister's children, squinting on a beach in Florida. Lorraine, arm in arm with a group of women, all platinum hair and predatory teeth, champagne flutes held high. My small, 5x7 college graduation photo, the one of me and Dad, is gone. In its place is a polished, abstract sculpture of a bird. Wings spread, beak open. "I actually got the promotion." "Dad," I say, trying to find my footing on the new, plush oriental rug. It's a different pattern. The old one is gone. The vice president role for the whole division. It's official as of last week. My dad's face brightens, a flash of the man he was. "Elena, that's wonderful. I knew you." "Oh, marvelous, dear." Lorraine cuts in. Her voice slices right through his. She's at the hall table, sorting a stack of glossy mail. My announcement, the news I'd practiced telling him on the 3-hour drive, is metaphorically and literally folded in half and tucked under a grocery list for kale, goat cheese, and prosciutto. "Graham, did you remember to call the caterer about the Philo cups? We simply must have them. The gala is everything this year." She turns back to me, her smile perfectly stapled in place, but it doesn't reach her eyes. They are cold, assessing. "You'll have to tell me all about your little job later. It sounds very technical. The conversation is redirected. My achievement is filed away, dismissed as a triviality. The subject is changed. The subject is always Lorraine. My half-brother, Miles, emerges from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his jeans. He's 24, with our father's height but none of his gravity. He moves with a nervous, unfocused energy. He is followed by his fiancée, Reese, a woman so beige in her sweater set and pale lipstick that she seems to be actively trying to blend into the neutral-toned walls. They're affably complicit. "Elena, hey," Miles says. He gives me a quick, one-armed hug while simultaneously checking a notification on his phone. "Traffic bad?" "It was fine," I say. Reese just smiles, a practiced, pleasant vacancy. "Lorraine, those cookies you bought are amazing." They are Lorraine's lieutenants, a quiet, deferential court. They laugh at her jokes before the punchline lands. They fetch her glasses of wine. They are part of the new furniture, and they are benefiting from the new arrangement. They look at me with a faint, polite suspicion. I am the old furniture, the piece that doesn't match the new decor. And then there is the tree. It dominates the living room, a towering 12-foot fir that scrapes the vaulted ceiling. Its branches are dense and aggressively wide, pushing the armchairs out of their usual spots, forcing the entire room to reorganize itself around it. It's dripping with lights and heavy, glass ornaments, a chaotic riot of gold and red. "Isn't it glorious?" Lorraine breathes, clasping her hands together in performative awe. "I told the lot attendant I wanted the biggest one they had. It's symbolic of fresh starts, new growth." I look at the base. It's crammed into a dark green metal stand that is clearly, dangerously, too small. The trunk is listing, the entire massive tree leaning at a slight but perceptible angle toward the fireplace. I can see the frayed green wires of at least 10 light strings, wound so tightly around the branches they're digging into the bark. A few of the lower bulbs are already dark. "It's big," I say, my voice flat. "Did you anchor it to the wall?" Lorraine lets out that bright, brittle laugh. "Oh, Elena, always so practical. You sound just like an engineer. Don't be silly. It's perfectly fine. Stop looking for problems where there aren't any." The family video tradition starts almost immediately. Lorraine unwraps a new gimbal for her phone, a sleek black device that hums quietly. She glides through the room, the phone's lens panning smoothly, capturing her curated, palatable moments. Her laughing as she hands Reese a glass of wine. Miles, pretending to steal one of the store-bought cookies, my father, smiling woodenly at the camera on command. "Smile, Graham," she directs, her voice a soft purr. "Look like you're happy she's home." He smiles. It's a rictus. This isn't for us. It's not a home movie. It's content creation for her private social circle. The invisible audience she performs for 24 hours a day. I turn away, moving toward the kitchen, deliberately stepping out of the frame. The lens feels like a weapon, and I refuse to be ammunition for her narrative. Later, when Lorraine is upstairs on a call, my father corners me by the pantry. The air is safe here, still smelling faintly of onions and old wood. He presses a worn white grocery envelope into my hand. It's thick with small bills. I can feel the texture, 5s and 10s. "Just a little gas money," he mutters, his eyes fixed on the linoleum. "For the drive up, you know." I am 32 years old. I run an entire division at an international medical device corporation. My last bonus check could have bought the car I drove here. He's handing me maybe $60, like I'm still in college, home for Thanksgiving break and low on cash. It's his old tick, a habit from a time when he was in charge, a way of minimizing me, of keeping me as the child he understands, not the independent, successful adult I've become. It's a transaction to ease his guilt, a $60 apology for the woman upstairs, for the photo missing from the mantel, for his own visible retraction. I want to hand it back. I want to tell him I don't need it, that I need him to stand up. But I see the fear in his eyes, not of me, but of Lorraine returning, of being caught in this small, familiar act of fatherhood. So I just nod. Thanks, Dad. I slide the envelope into the pocket of my jeans. As I pull my hand out, my fingers brush against cold metal. It's the spare house key. I've had it on my ring since I was 16. It's attached to a cheap, novelty snowflake tag, the white paint chipped at the edges, the metal underneath showing through. I'd forgotten it was there. In the new order of this house, where I feel like I need an invitation to enter my own childhood living room, this key feels like a relic, an artifact from a buried civilization, a small, cold piece of leverage from a life that doesn't exist anymore. I close my hand around it, the sharp points of the snowflake digging into my palm. I pocket it again, but this time, it's with intent. The doorbell rings, a sharp, two-note chime that makes Lorraine call down from the landing. Her voice instantly sharp. "Miles, get that? It must be Arden. Tell him I'm on a call." But she's already descending the stairs, her phone pressed to her ear as she waves Miles back. A man I don't recognize is standing on the doorstep. He's shifting from foot to foot, rain dripping from the hood of his cheap windbreaker. He's pale and nervous, his eyes darting past Lorraine, into the house. He's clutching a large, black, 3-ring binder, and it looks damp. "Hi, Mrs. March," he stammers, as Lorraine reaches the bottom step, her phone disappearing into her back pocket. Her smile is instant and blinding. "Arden, thank you so much for coming by in this dreadful weather," she says, her voice a full 2 octaves lower than her darling voice. This is her business voice, all steel. She takes the binder from him and physically blocks his entry, her body angled in the doorway, a velvet-wrapped battering ram. "I'll have these back to you on Monday. First thing." "It's just," he says, his voice thin. "The quarterly meeting is Tuesday, and we really need the signed approvals for the Monday. Arden, I'll call you." Her tone is final. She's already closing the door on his unfinished sentence, hustling him away so quickly it's almost violent. She shuts the door, the lock clicking loudly in the sudden quiet. Before the door closed, as she took the binder, I clocked the logo embossed on the cover, a stylized deer with oversized antlers, Stag Hollow Association. And I saw the yellow sticky note on the cover, a code written in thick black felt-tip pen, Q4 Reserves ADGE. Lorraine places the binder on the hall table, immediately covering it with the junk mail she was sorting. But I saw it. I work in a world of compliance and audits. I know exactly what an adjustment to reserves means. It means money is moving. It means a story is being changed after the fact. The rain starts in earnest then, no longer a drizzle, but a hard, rattling downpour. It's a cold rain for December. Not the soft, picturesque snow Winterridge is known for. A gust of wind hits the side of the house, and inside the living room, the towering fir creaks. The sound is high and strained, like a rope pulling too tight. The heavy glass ornaments sway. Miles, oblivious, laughs from the couch. "Geez, that thing moves a lot. Remember the tree-tipping curse, Dad? Remember when Elena knocked over Grandma's tree at the old house?" Reese giggles, a small, bird-like sound. "Oh my God, did you?" My father manages a weak smile, lost in the memory. "We had to re-glue that porcelain angel for years after. Your grandmother was so upset. They all laugh at the memory of me, age 9, clumsy and mortified, having broken a priceless family heirloom. Everyone laughs, except me. I'm not looking at them. I'm looking at the unstable base of the tree. I'm watching the frayed wires of the lights, plugged into an overloaded power strip. I'm watching the whole magnificent, symbolic, overloaded mess lean. And I know, with the absolute certainty of a failure analyst, that it's not a matter of if, but when. And this time, it won't be an accident. The college game was on, a meaningless preseason basketball tournament. The television's volume was too high, a synthetic roar of sneakers squeaking and commentators shouting, all of it layering on top of Lorraine's brittle laughter and the clinking of ice in heavy glasses. My father was in his recliner, his face slack, eyes aimed at the screen, but seeing nothing. Miles and Reese were on the sofa, angled toward the game, but really just angled toward Lorraine, waiting for their next cue. I was trying to make myself small in a wingback chair by the window, feeling the cold rain tick against the glass, when Lorraine's voice cut through the noise. "Elena, darling, be a doll." She didn't look at me. She was refreshing her own cocktail, a heavy pour of vodka, a whisper of tonic, at the bar cart. The skirt under the tree is all bunched, and I can see the extension cords. It looks tacky. Fix it, would you? It wasn't a request. It was an order, delivered with a bright smile for the benefit of the two other couples in the room, Lorraine's friends, who were observing the scene with the polite indifference of an audience. I looked at the tree. The base was a dark, tangled mess of wires, the velvet skirt she'd thrown down in a heap. "Can we unplug it first?" I asked. My voice was quiet. Lorraine waved a dismissive hand, her rings flashing. "Oh, don't be fussy. It's just a few plugs. It will take you 2 seconds. Go on, go on." I felt the eyes on me, my father, sinking deeper into his chair. Miles, suddenly fascinated by the floorboards. I exhaled, a slow, controlled breath, and walked to the tree. I crouched, the branches instantly crowding me. The scent of pine was overwhelming, sharp and sappy, but underneath it was something else, a hot, chemical smell. My fingers traced the wires, untangling them from the bunched-up skirt. The main power strip was wedged between the tree stand and the wall, the string of lights plugged into the very end. The one closest to me felt warm. Not just warm, but hot. The green plastic was tacky, almost soft. I followed it to the plug itself. The plastic casing around the prongs was dark, a brownish-black char. It was melting. "Lorraine," I said, my voice low but sharp. I didn't stand up. "This isn't safe. This plug is charred. The whole strip is overloaded." I heard her high, tinkling laugh from across the room. She was leaning against the bar, posing for her audience. "Elena, you are being so dramatic. It's just Christmas lights. It's been plugged in like that for 3 days. It's fine." "It's not fine," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "It's a fire hazard." "What did she say?" One of Lorraine's friends, a woman with a tight, shiny face, asked. "She said it's a fire hazard," Lorraine announced, rolling her eyes. "My little operations manager, always finding a problem." She raised her glass. "She's just being dramatic." Beside her, the woman's husband, a man in a blindingly pink cashmere sweater, raised his phone. The small red light was on. He was filming, just capturing the hilarious holiday moment, the dramatic stepdaughter. I felt a surge of cold anger. I tugged, trying to get enough slack to pull the melting plug, to just kill the circuit. But the cord was pinned by the metal leg of the tree stand. "Just fix the skirt, Elena," Lorraine commanded, her voice losing its humor. "And stop muttering." I shoved the velvet skirt, trying to straighten it, trying to hide the dangerous, tangled nest of wires as I had been ordered. My shoulder bumped the trunk. The tree shifted. It was a small movement at first, a heavy, watery sway. The higher ornaments clinked together like panicked wind chimes. "Whoa," Miles said from the couch. I instinctively tried to brace the trunk, my hands flat against the bark. Needles, sharp as pins, jabbed my neck and scalp. "It's going," I said, my voice tight. "It's not stable." "Don't be ridiculous," Lorraine snapped. "You pushed it." One of the guests, the woman with the shiny face, stood up to get a better look at the game. Her hip bumped the coffee table. The coffee table slammed into the tree stand. It was silent for one long, impossible second. The physics were already in motion. The massive fur, overloaded, unstable, and unanchored, tipped. It didn't fall fast. It was a slow, majestic, horrifying pivot, a groan of wood, the sharp, shattering sound of the first glass ornaments hitting the hardwood floor, then a rush of air, the scent of pine sap exploding into the room. It fell toward the fireplace, a cascade of breaking glass, tangled lights, and green needles. I was still crouching. I threw my arms up to protect my face as the trunk crashed down, missing the coffee table but obliterating a porcelain lamp on the side table. Ornaments shattered like tiny bombs. A spray of murky water from the too small stand soaked my jeans. Sticky, viscous sap immediately smeared my hands, my arms, my hair. The room was silent, except for the crunch of glass. Then from across the room, I heard it. Laughter. Lorraine was laughing. It was a sharp, performative, ugly sound. She was leaning against the bar, her hand over her mouth, but her shoulders were shaking. "Oh my God!" she shrieked, looking at her friends. "She really did it! The tree-tipping curse! She really did it!" The man in the pink sweater still had his phone up. He was filming the wreckage. He was filming me. I stayed on my knees for a second, surrounded by the ruin. My left hand stung. I looked down. A shard of a broken blue glass ball was embedded in my palm. A perfect, clean slice, blood, dark and thick, was already welling up, mixing with the clear, sticky sap. I looked up. I looked at Lorraine, who was still smiling, her face a mask of brittle amusement. I looked at her friends, their faces a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity. I looked at Miles and Reese, frozen on the sofa. Then I looked at my father. He was standing now, his recliner clicking back into place. His face was pale, his hands clenched at his sides. He wasn't looking at the tree. He wasn't looking at the blood on my hand. He was looking at Lorraine, waiting. She met his gaze. Her smile didn't falter. He turned his gaze on me. It was flat, empty, a verdict. "Clean that up," he said. His voice was quiet, but it landed like a slammed door. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Let me help you." Not, "Lorraine, shut up." Clean that up. The room was still. No one moved. No one offered a towel. No one offered a bandage. The man in the pink sweater slowly lowered his phone, his face flushed. I stayed on my knees, the glass digging into my skin, and in that moment, the entire, invisible architecture of the house was revealed. The hierarchy, the fault lines, the unspoken rules of this new regime. I was not family. I was the help. I was the problem. I was the one who would be blamed for the break, not the one who warned of it. My eyes started to water. A hot, sharp sting, not from the slap that I knew, abstractly, was coming, not from the cut. It was from the recognition, the absolute, cold clarity of my position. Lorraine walked over, her heels crunching on the pine needles and shattered glass. She was still smiling. She stopped in front of me, looked down, and then she did it. She slapped me. It wasn't a hard slap. It was a swat, a dismissive, stinging, open-palmed slap across the cheek, the kind you would give a hysterical child, not a 32-year-old woman. Her rings were cold against my skin. The room gasped. This was not part of the performance. The phones, which had been lowered, went up again, all of them. Miles, Reese, the shiny-faced woman, even the man in the pink sweater, his eyes wide. They were all filming now. They were all witnesses. They were all complicit. I didn't flinch. I just looked up at her. The welt was already rising on my face, a hot counterpoint to the blood dripping from my hand. "Clean that up," my father said again, his voice harder this time, a command. I steadied myself. I took a breath, and I began. I stood up, methodical, silent. I went to the kitchen. No one spoke. I could feel their eyes on my back. I opened the utility closet. I got the large black trash bags. I got the dustpan and the handheld brush. I got the roll of paper towels. I did not get the first aid kit. I walked back into the living room. The tableau was exactly as I had left it. Lorraine had returned to the bar, her back to me, pouring herself another drink as if nothing had happened. My father had returned to his chair. I began to clean. I cataloged everything. The faces, the angles, who was filming from where. Reese, From the sofa, capturing Lorraine, the tree, and me, the man in pink, by the bar, capturing my father's inaction. I started with the large branches, snapping them and forcing them into the black bags. The sap was instant, coating my hands, gluing the needles to my skin. The blood from my palms smeared onto the green branches. I knelt to sweep the glass. My hand was throbbing, a deep, rhythmic ache. Lorraine's voice, a low, venomous whisper, slid into my ear. She had come up behind me, her drink in her hand, her smile still firmly in place for her guests. "Don't bleed on the rug," she whispered, her breath hot and smelling of vodka. "It's silk, and it was very, very expensive." I paused, the brush hovering over a pile of glittering red and gold dust. I did not look at her. I saw Miles, across the room. He half stood, his face pale, his mouth working. He took one step forward. "Mom, maybe—" Lorraine's free hand, the one without the drink, grazed his arm. Just a touch. Her long, perfectly manicured nails, painted a deep, blood red, just scraped his sweater. It was a leash disguised as affection, a silent, vicious command. He shrank. He sat back down on the sofa, his eyes dropping to his lap, his face burning with a shame that was, for now, useless to me. He picked up his phone and pretended to scroll. I finished sweeping the glass. I carefully picked the last remaining, unbroken ornaments from the dead branches and set them aside. I used the paper towels to sop up the dark, spilled water, which was now mixing with the glittering shards. My hand was a mess. I didn't care. When the floor was finally clean, when the last of the needles were swept and the bags were tied, I stood up. The room was quiet. The basketball game had gone to commercial. There was one last piece, the star. It had been at the top, a heavy silver, 5-pointed thing. It had flown across the room and landed on the hearth, unbroken. But the loop at the top had snapped off, leaving a sharp silver metal hook attached to it. I picked up the broken star. It was heavy in my good hand. I walked to the mantel. Lorraine's mantel, the one covered in her family, her achievements, her life. I set the broken star in the one empty space, right in the center, a void she hadn't yet filled. It rested there, a jagged, silver accusation. Then I picked up the small, silver ornament hook that had broken off. It was just a piece of bent, sturdy wire, a tool. I closed my left hand over it, the blood and sap on my palms sealing it. I slid it into the pocket of my jeans, next to the house key, next to my father's $60. A future lockpick tool, a piece of leverage. I turned, and without a word, I walked out of the living room, up the stairs, leaving a faint, sticky, crimson print on the dustpan I left by the door. I locked the guest room door. It was the only room in the house, besides my old childhood bedroom, that had a simple, non-locking handle. I wedged the thin, vinyl-covered desk chair under the knob. It wouldn't stop anyone, but it would make noise. It would buy me seconds. My cheek was hot, a tight, radiating pulse. My left palm was worse, a sticky, agonizing mess of pine sap, blood, and the grit from the floor. I went into the attached bathroom and turned on the lights. They were the same harsh, fluorescent bulbs Lorraine favored, the kind that bleach all the color from your skin and leave only the flaws. I looked in the mirror. The mark on my cheek was already darkening, a blotchy red map of her fingers, the distinct impression of her rings near my jawline. It was ugly, stark, and undeniable. This was data. I took my phone out of my back pocket. The screen was smeared. I wiped it on my jeans. I opened the camera, reversed the view. It was awkward. I couldn't get the angle right. I saw my compact mirror in my bag, the one I used for checking my teeth after lunch. Not for documenting an assault. I angled the compact to catch the light, held the phone steady with my right hand, and took the picture. I took 4, one close, one showing the full side of my face, one with the bathroom light in the background to prove the location. I checked the metadata. December 8th, 9:47 p.m., Geotag. Winter Ridge, Vermont. Time-stamped evidence. I turned to the sink. The priority was the cut. I turned on the hot water, as hot as I could stand, and began the slow, painful process of dissolving the sap. The soap stung, but the hot water and the friction finally broke down the resin, revealing the clean 2-inch slice across my palm. It was deep. It would need stitches. I didn't have time for stitches. I wrapped it tightly in a clean washcloth. I walked back into the guest room, my bag already open on the bed. I was leaving. I was not spending the night. I was not staying for breakfast. I was done. As I zipped my toiletries bag, I noticed it on the dresser, placed there to solicit contributions. A small laminated cardboard box. A glossy flyer was taped next to it, showing a smiling, generic, multi-ethnic child holding a textbook. The logo read, Lorraine's Winter Ridge Children's Fund. It was a pathetic display. I looked inside the slot. A few singles, maybe a $5 bill, $20, maximum. It was pocket change, a performance of charity for her house guests. But the flyer was the mistake. In the bottom corner, in small print, was the legal line, a registered 501c3 organization, and next to it, the EIN, the employer identification number. Lorraine was many things. Meticulous was not one of them. She was a performer who left her props lying around. I sat on the edge of the bed. My hand throbbed inside the washcloth. I pulled out my phone. I didn't use the web. I used the official IRS database app, Tax-Exempt Organization Search. I typed in the 9-digit number. My pulse was a low, steady drum in my ears. The database hung for a second, then returned a result. The EIN was valid, a registered charity. Only the name didn't match. The EIN belonged to LM Foundation, Inc., not the Winter Ridge Children's Fund. A wobble, the first tangible, legal crack. The Children's Fund was a front, a cheap, disposable mask. The LM Foundation, Inc., was the real entity, a shell corporation disguised as philanthropy, a funnel, the money from the gala, the donations from her friends. It wasn't going to that smiling child on the poster. It was going into a corporate entity controlled by Lorraine March. A soft knock came at the door. I didn't answer. The chair was still under the knob. The door pushed open, sliding the chair back with a scrape. My father. He looked small. His eyes were gray. His skin looked papery under the harsh light. He didn't look at my face. He didn't look at the washcloth I was holding, which was already spotting with red. He looked at my duffel bag, zipped and ready on the bed. "Elena," he started. His voice was a rasp. He was holding a stack of small porcelain dessert plates, the ones with the little gold rims, the ones we only used at Christmas. He was holding them like a shield. He cleared his throat. The apology never formed. He couldn't look at the welt. He couldn't ask about my hand. To acknowledge the injury would be to acknowledge the assailant, and to acknowledge the assailant would be to acknowledge his own failure. He defaulted to the script that Lorraine wrote. Lorraine. She was just wondering. His eyes skittered to the wall, to the floor, to the ceiling. She's wondering if you'll help with the dessert plates. The Alperts are still here. She's cutting the cake. I stared at him. He was asking me to go back downstairs. He was asking me to put on a smile, with the map of his wife's fingers on my face, and serve cake to the people who had filmed my humiliation. He was asking me, not her, to clean it up, to smooth it over, to be the bigger person, to swallow the blood and the glass and ask them if they wanted coffee or tea. In that single cowardly moment, he cemented the hierarchy. The girl who had been slapped was the problem. The woman who did the slapping was cutting cake. A small, cold calm settled over me. This was the fulcrum point. This was the moment the entire machine pivoted. I kept my voice perfectly even, not hysterical, not angry, not emotional, a flat, clinical statement. No. It was a single word. In that house, a word I had never used. It was seismic. He flinched, a small, involuntary recoil, as if I had struck him. The dessert plates rattled in his hands. He didn't understand. He was still looking at the 9-year-old girl who had tipped the tree and cried. He didn't recognize the 32-year-old woman who had just cataloged an assault. "Elena, just don't make this difficult," he whispered, pleading. "I'm not," I said. I picked up my bag. I walked past him, deliberately, not brushing his arm. I didn't slam the door. I just walked. I walked down the stairs. The murmur of the living room stopped. I could feel their eyes. Lorraine was in the kitchen, her voice high and bright. "Oh, it's just a dream. The crumb is so—" I didn't get my coat from the closet. I grabbed it from the hook where she'd hung it. I opened the front door. The cold, wet air hit my face. It was a baptism. He was there. Curbside, hiding under the shadow of a dripping, overgrown pine, just outside the range of the porch light. Arden Pike. He was smoking, a nervous, frantic pace, the cherry flaring red in the damp dark. He looked like he was going to be sick. He saw me, and he looked even sicker. He dropped the cigarette, a hiss as it hit the wet pavement, and he stepped on it. "Miss March," he stammered. He was wringing his hands. I was just leaving. I heard the crash. I saw you, on the floor." He was vibrating with a terrified, guilty energy. "What do you want, Arden?" My voice was cold. It cut through the light rain. I want you to know. I told her it was a bad idea," he whispered, a desperate torrent of words. "The reserves. She said it was just temporary reallocation. She said the gala would fix everything, impress the new investors. She promised to fix it." "Fix what?" "The shortfall," he said, his voice cracking. "The landscaping contract. It was too much. We're short for the quarter, maybe 75,000. If the board finds out—" She took my portal access. She said she'd handle the treasurer duties for efficiency. I can't even see the accounts. "Miss March, I'm the treasurer, and I can't see the accounts." A weak link, a compromised witness, a man drowning, looking for a life raft. "Arden," I said, stepping closer, "give me your phone." "What?" "Your phone, give it to me." He fumbled, his hands shaking, and handed me his unlocked phone. I opened his dialer. I called my number. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I hung up. I handed it back. "Now you have my number," I said, my voice low and hard. "I want everything, the meeting minutes, the budget proposals, the emails from her. I want the name of the landscaping company. I want the evidence of the shortfall. You will send it to me tonight." I held up my left hand, the washcloth dark and saturated. The sleeve of my coat was tacky with sap. "This is what she does to people who get in her way. Right now, you are in her way. I am the only one who can help you." He nodded, his eyes wide with terror. Okay, tonight." I got into my rental SUV. The sound of the door locking was the best sound I had ever heard. I started the engine, turned the heat on full blast, and pulled away from the curb. I didn't drive far. 2 streets down. I parked under the dark canopy of a leafless maple tree, the streetlights too far away to matter. I turned off the engine. I took out my phone. I opened the voice memo app. I hit record. "My name is Elena March. It is December 8th, approximately 10:05 p.m. I am in my rental car. License plate." I read it from the keychain. "I have just left my father's residence at 24 Stag Hollow Drive. Approximately 30 minutes ago, I was assaulted by Lorraine March. She struck me on the left side of my face following a verbal altercation." I recorded everything: the charred plug, the unstable tree, the fall, the guests, Miles March, Reese, and 2 other guests, a man and a woman, recorded the incident on their phones. My father's words. My father, Graham March, instructed me, twice, to clean that up. I recorded Arden's confession. Arden Pike, Stag Hollow HOA treasurer, confirmed a $75,000 shortfall in HOA reserves and stated Lorraine March has sole control of the treasurer's bank portal. I stopped. I saved it. December 8th. Evidence log 01. I emailed it to my private, encrypted server. Fresh memory capture. Then I drove. I found a 24-hour pharmacy on the highway, a bright, fluorescent box in the dark. The teenager at the register was half asleep. I bought sterile wipes, butterfly bandages, a small black tube of medical-grade superglue, a bottle of water, a protein bar. In the school supply aisle, I found what I needed: a cheap, spiral notebook, college-ruled, 70 sheets, a 2-pack of black ballpoint pens. I paid cash. I drove to the Winter Ridge Motel. The sign was missing the M. It was the cheap, weekly rate place by the interstate. I paid cash for one night. Room 112. I locked the door. I bolted the chain. I wedged the small metal desk chair under the handle. In the yellow light of the motel bathroom, I cleaned my hand. The alcohol from the wipes was a blinding, clarifying pain. I pulled the cut closed. I applied a thin, precise bead of the superglue. I held it for 60 seconds. The skin sealed. The bleeding stopped. The pain subsided into a dull, tight throb. I sat at the desk. I drank the entire bottle of water. I opened the notebook. On the first page, I drew the diagram, a map of the rot. Dad, Graham, was in a box at the top, but Lorraine was in a larger box, connected with a thick, one-way arrow. From Lorraine, the lines went out. Lorraine, HOA, Arden Reserves Shortfall. Lorraine, Charity, 501c3, Mismatch, LM Foundation Ein Key. Lorraine, Gala, Cover for Shortfall. Funnel, Lorraine, Dad, Control Postnup, Will, Lorraine, Miles, Complicit Vendor. I turned the page. I wrote a heading, Leverage. I listed them. 1. Video footage, Miles, guests, proof of assault. 2. HOA records, Arden, proof of financial mismanagement. 3. IRS database, EN mismatch, proof of potential fraud. 4. Arden Pike, witness. 5. My own testimony, photos, voice memo. The broken silver ornament hook was still in my pocket. I took it out and set it on the desk. Next to it, I placed the snowflake house key. My father's voice echoed in my head. Clean that up. He had no idea. I picked up the pen. My hand was steady, the cut sealed and tight. At the bottom of the page, I wrote the words, I'll clean it up. I underlined it. Once, twice, 3 times. The tip of the pen tore through the cheap paper. I slept for 3 hours. A hard, dreamless void. My hand throbbed. A dull baseline to the clear, cold anger I woke with. The motel room was gray in the pre-dawn light. My phone, plugged into the wall by the bed, was vibrating. It was Arden, a string of panicked texts. Sent between 2 and 4 a.m. She called me. She knows I talked to you. She said you were unstable. She said you threatened her. She said you're just jealous of her and your dad. Then a long one, at 3:30 a.m. Here, this is all I have. The landscaping invoices, the last approved minutes from September. Please don't tell her I sent these. She'll ruin me. Attached were 4 blurry, low-resolution images of PDF documents, useless as evidence, but perfect as a map. I got out of bed, my body stiff. I made the terrible, sludgy motel coffee and sat at the desk. I opened my laptop and started a new, secure, encrypted drive. I needed to build this right, from a clean foundation. My first call was not to a lawyer, it was to Nadia Holt. Nadia works in compliance at Marrowgate, a fintech shark tank in Austin. Her job is to find illicit money movement that the SEC's algorithms miss. She lives and breathes public record, and she owes me for the time I found the flaw in her ex-boyfriend's home security system, proving he was the one stealing her mail. I called her personal line. She picked up on the second ring, her voice already sharp. This is a weird time. Elena, what's broken? A system, I said, and I need pointers on how to prove it. Strictly public record. I'm not asking you to run anything. Nadia, I'm asking for the path. How do I find the real bones of a shell charity? And how do I track HOA money that's gone missing? There was a pause. I heard the click-clack of her keyboard. You're finally looking into the new wife, aren't you? It's about time. Okay, public record only. You start with the town. Always start with the town. People forget everything is public. For 20 minutes, she gave me the workflow. Don't just search the IRS database. Search the state's Secretary of State business lookup. Don't just look at meeting minutes. Cross-reference them with town permit applications. Permits, she said, are where people get lazy. They list contractors, they list budgets, and they have to be signed. Go to the town clerk's office. Elena, she said, her voice turning sharp. In person, wear a nice, boring sweater, look like a concerned resident, not a pissed-off daughter. They'll give you everything. And Elena? Be careful. People who do this stuff on a small-town scale are 10 times more vicious than my guys. They're not just protecting money, they're protecting their reputation in the grocery store. Got it, I said. Thanks, Nadia. And send me the EIN, she said, casual. I'm not going to run it. I'm just curious. I sent her the number and shut the laptop. By 9 a.m., I was at the Winter Ridge Town Hall. I was wearing a beige cable knit sweater I'd bought at the pharmacy. My hair was in a tight bun, and my cut hand was discreetly wrapped. I was the picture of harmless, civic-minded concern. I filed 3 public records requests. First, the budgets, expenditures, and all signed meeting minutes for the Stag Hollow HOA for the past 24 months. Second, the event permit application for the Winter Ridge Children's Fund Gala at the Hartwell Conservatory, including all vendor lists, insurance riders, and security plans. Third, all certificates of business registration for any company owned by a Miles March or a Lorraine March, registered in the last 3 years. The clerk, a woman who looked like she'd been stapled to her chair since 1980, barely looked up. Records are internal, dear. We don't keep those. You do, I said, my voice quiet and pleasant. Stag Hollow is a planned unit development, which means its bylaws and annual budgets are filed with the Town Planning Commission under Ordinance 3-15. I'd like all amendments and the last 2 filed budgets. She looked up. Her glasses slid down her nose. I had just become slightly more annoying than her usual traffic. That'll be 10 cents a page, she said, turning her chair. It might take an hour. I'll wait, I said. An hour and $44 in copy fees later. I was back in a new motel room, 2 towns over. I'd checked out of the first one, paid cash, and left no forwarding address. I spread the documents on the clean, particle board desk. The paper trail was all there. It didn't just not want to be found. It was screaming. The IRS database was the first link. I did the cross-check Nadia suggested. The Winter Ridge Children's Fund was, as I'd suspected, just a name. It was a DBA, doing business as, for the LM Foundation, Inc. All funds were directed into a donor-advised fund. This was the brilliant part of the scam. A DAF allows the donor, Lorraine, to take an immediate, massive tax deduction, while having no legal obligation to ever pay the money out to an actual charity. She could just let it sit, advising it, for the rest of her life. It was a private, tax-free piggy bank, funded by her friends' gala donations. The second link was the HOA minutes, which I cross-referenced with Arden's blurry photos. The minutes from the September meeting were clinical. Board approves emergency landscaping overruns, $25,000, due to unforeseen storm damage. It was signed by the whole board, but Arden's attachment showed the real invoice, $75,000, not $25,000. The vendor was listed on the invoice, Winter Ridge Evergreen Co. The third link came from the town business registry, Winter Ridge Evergreen Company, LLC, registered 6 months ago, address, Epiphano, Box, sole proprietor, Miles March, my own half-brother. Lorraine had used an HOA emergency to pay her own son $75,000, $50,000 of which was completely off the books, for landscaping that probably never happened. The final link was the gala permit, the contract for the Hartwell Conservatory, It was all there. But the most interesting part was the addendum for the damage deposit. The conservatory normally required a $10,000 deposit held in escrow. Lorraine's contract had the deposit waived. The line item was signed by Arden Pike, Stag Hollow treasurer, in a looping, flamboyant signature that looked nothing like the cramped, spiky signature on the HOA minutes I was holding. She had forged his name. She had him pinned. He had approved a massive, fraudulent payout to her son, and now she had a forged document she could hold over his head if he ever spoke up. He wasn't just compromised, he was owned. I had to see him. I texted him from my new burner phone, which I'd bought with cash at a gas station. Coffee, now. He met me at a neutral location, a highway donut shop between the two towns. He was a wreck. He hadn't slept. He was drinking his coffee with 3 hands, his own 2 plus the table's. "She called me," he whispered, staring into his cup. "She said you're trying to destroy your father's happiness. She said I was confused about the reserves." "Arden," I said, sliding the copy of the conservatory contract across the table. "Look at this. Page 4, the deposit waiver." He looked. His face, already pale, went the color of skim milk. I never saw this." "I know," I said. "That's not your signature, is it?" "No," he whispered. "Oh, God, no." "She floated the idea, didn't she?" I said, leaning in. "To reassign reserves. That's what you said. What was the real reason? Not investors." He finally broke. The story came out. A pathetic, stammering confession. Lorraine had wanted to buy into a private equity group, a local one, to get on the real social ladder. The gala was her audition. The $75,000 landscaping fee wasn't for landscaping, it was her buy-in. She had told Arden and Miles it was a temporary loan from the reserves, and the gala's charity proceeds would pay it back before the 4th quarter audit. She was robbing the HOA to fund her social climbing application. "I need bank proof. Arden," I said, "I need the statements showing the transfer from the Stag Hollow account to Miles's LLC." He physically recoiled. "I can't. I told you. She controls the portal. She changed the passwords. She said it was for efficiency, to streamline payments. I have no access. I'm just a signature now. Oh, God. I'm just a signature." He was useless. I left him at the table, a man already in his own grave. Back at the new motel, I stood in front of the window. The pieces were all there. I mapped the money flow, this time on a fresh page. HOA reserves, Stag Hollow, illegal transfer, 75 KO, landscaping, vendor, Winter Ridge Evergreen Cones, Miles, gala expenses, donation, charity, LM Foundation, Inkbond/Lorraine, likely, private investment account, her buy-in. It was clean, it was simple, it was state-level felony fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. My burner phone buzzed on the desk. A new number, not Arden, one text, "Stop digging." I stared at it. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. My failure analysis brain kicked in. Who knew I was digging? Arden, Miles, Lorraine, my father. This was a leak. I saved the number. A quick search. A prepaid burner. Activated 12 hours ago. The kind you buy at a gas station. I was pulling the curtain shut when the second text came. It was a photograph. My heart didn't stop. It did the opposite. It hammered. A cold, hard, single beat. It was a photo of my first motel room door. Room 112. The peeling paint. The tarnished brass numbers. It was taken from the hallway. Close up. She knew where I had been. She, or someone she sent, had been there. They had stood outside my door, while I was at town hall, while I was talking to Arden. I didn't panic. I calibrated. They were looking for me. They knew I was in a motel. They didn't know which motel. Not anymore. I was already 2 towns away. This changed the timeline. My original plan was to gather the paper, hand it to the DA, and let the system work. But the system is slow, and Lorraine was not. She was an animal, and she knew she was being hunted. Now, she was hunting back. I opened my laptop. I wasn't scared. I was methodical. I ordered a pocket body cam, the kind that looks like a high-end pen. I ordered 2 Wi-Fi-enabled button cams, micro lenses I could sew into a lapel or a bag. I ordered a high-sensitivity audio recorder, the size of a credit card. I paid for it all with a clean, untraceable gift card I kept for emergencies. I had it all overnighted, not to the motel, but to an Amazon locker at a 24-hour supermarket in the next county over. I shut the laptop. I looked at the diagram of the money. I looked at the picture of my old motel door. Lorraine thought she was playing a game of social humiliation, of whispers and backdating. She was bringing a cocktail grin to a data-driven war. She wanted to confront me, to scare me, to slap me back into submission. I would not confront, not yet. I would not hand this to the DA, not yet. I was going to build a stage. I was going to hand-feed her the script. I was going to provide the lighting, the witnesses, and the cameras, and I was going to let her, in her own brittle, confident voice, confess to every single crime. She would clean herself up. At 3 a.m., I drove to the 24-hour supermarket in the next county. The Amazon locker was bright yellow, glowing under the fluorescent lights of the deserted parking lot. I punched in the code. The small metal door, C14, clicked open. Inside was my arsenal. It was small, discreet, and perfectly legal. Back in my new motel room, the third one in as many days, this one paid for with a different cash deposit, I unboxed the equipment. The pen camera was sleek, brushed black metal. It wrote, which was a nice touch. The audio recorder was no thicker than 3 credit cards stacked, but the button cams were the main event. They were tiny. The lenses no bigger than a pinhead, attached to a flat, flexible wire and a small, square battery pack. I spent the next 2 hours in a state of controlled, focused rehearsal. I wasn't just planning a heist. I was stress-testing a system, my system. I took a cheap plastic holiday wreath I'd bought at the pharmacy and practiced affixing the button cam. The battery pack was the problem. I tucked it deep within the plastic pine needles, then used the thin dark green floral wire I'd also bought to secure it. I threaded the lens itself through the center of a red velvet ribbon, a single, dark eye hidden in the festive bow. I practiced palming it, walking with it, and placing it on a hook, all while checking the live feed on my burner phone. Invisible. Stable. Next, I took the silver ornament hook from my pocket. It was sturdy. I'd bought 3 cheap, novelty padlocks from the hardware aisle. They were the kind people use on school lockers or cheap diaries. I sat at the desk, the silver hook in my gloved right hand, my good hand. The sealed cut on my left palm was a tight, pulling reminder. I didn't rake. I picked. I felt for the pins. The first lock took me 7 minutes. The second took 3. The third one, I opened in 30 seconds. I did it again, and again, building the muscle memory. The silver hook, once a symbol of a broken family, was now a key. I waited until I was sure. Lorraine's routine was predictable. I'd watched her, in previous years. She had her day, Tuesday, 10 a.m., yoga, 11:30, errand running, which was code for coffee and gossip with her platinum-haired friends, 12:30, lunch. She would be gone for at least 3 hours. I drove the rental SUV, but I didn't park in the neighborhood. I parked a mile away, in a public lot, and walked. The cold air was sharp. I wore a plain gray sweatsuit and a baseball cap. Nothing memorable. The snowflake key slid into the lock of the side door, the mudroom entrance, with a quiet, familiar click. It was the original lock, the one Lorraine hadn't bothered to change, an oversight, a small, structural failure in her otherwise perfect system. The house was silent. It smelled of that fake cinnamon and the acidic, sharp scent of dead pine from the tree that was now gone. The house felt colder, emptier. I moved fast. I was on the clock. The first camera, the living room, the spot where the tree had been, was now a conspicuous, empty space. Lorraine had rearranged the furniture to cover it, but the new plush rug was still there, and so was the bar cart, pushed against the wall. I placed the first button cam, the one in the wreath. I didn't hang it. I tucked it behind the bar cart, angled perfectly to capture the entire foyer, the front door, and the entrance to my father's study. It had a perfect, wide view. I checked the signal. Strong. The Wi-Fi hop was live. The second camera was for the living room itself. I had a theory that she would replace the tree. I saw a large, empty pot by the fireplace. I was right. She'd get a new one, a smaller, manageable one. I tucked the second camera, stripped of its wreath, into the dense, artificial garland on the mantel. It blended perfectly with the cluster of fake pine cones, aimed directly at my father's recliner and the sofa. 2 sets of eyes, both mine. Next, my father's study. This was the real target. The door was, as usual, unlocked. The room was unchanged, but the air was different, stale. On his desk, in the center of the leather blotter, was a single, folded, cream-colored document. It was thick, good paper stock. It wasn't there by accident. It was left out to be seen. I pulled on a fresh pair of latex gloves. I didn't touch it. I read it. Codicil to the last will and testament of Graham L. March. It was freshly typed. The date at the bottom was from 2 days ago, the day after the incident. I scanned the text. My name was there, once, referencing the original trust my mother had set up, but Lorraine's name, her name was everywhere. Granting my beloved wife, Lorraine March, full executor responsibilities, full power of attorney, effective immediately, in the event of my cognitive decline or incapacitation, as determined by her and her chosen physician. The Stag Hollow property, and all its contents, to be transferred to Lorraine March upon my death, superseding any prior trusts. He was signing it all away. He wasn't just being managed, he was being harvested. I heard a noise outside, a car. I didn't move. It passed. I took the tiny audio recorder from my pocket. I activated it. I slipped it under the desk, adhering it to the deep, wooden modesty panel, right near the knee well. It was high sensitivity, designed to pick up whispers. I'd already paired it to my phone. I set the sound triggers. The device would send me a silent notification, a one-word alert, if it picked up specific keywords. Sign, transfer, trust, Lorraine, Elena. She would have him sign it, and when she did, I would have the audio of the coercion. I moved to the file cabinet. It was unlocked. I wasn't looking for the will. I was looking for the gala. It was right there, in the front, in a pristine, labeled green folder. Gala, vendors, and VIPs. She was arrogant. She was sloppy. I took out my phone. I didn't just photograph the vendor list. I photographed the seating chart. This was the real map. The names she had circled in red. The town manager, the local bank vice president, a judge's spouse. These weren't guests. These were targets. These were the investors Arden mentioned, the people she was impressing by robbing the HOA. These were her next level of victims. I put the folder back. I went to the laundry room, the pass-through from the kitchen to the garage. It was Lorraine's command center. The counter was littered with papers, receipts, and junk. In a cardboard box, the kind paper reams come in. I found them, sheets and sheets of return address labels. Winterridge Children's Fund, Winterridge Evergreen Cumber LLC, and a third one, Stag Hollow Holdings, LP. A third shell. This one wasn't an LLC. It was a limited partnership, more complex, harder to trace. The address wasn't a P.O. box. It was a high-end mail drop in another state. This was where the money was really going. The LM Foundation was the funnel. The Evergreen Co. was the washer. But Stag Hollow Holdings was the vault. And then I saw it. On the counter, half covered by a dry cleaning receipt, a yellow sticky note. The ink was wet, a new, felt-tip pen. It was her handwriting, the same looping, aggressive script from the forged signature. Arden, sign backdated minutes, Septi. Must be 2 Zam. She was already covering her tracks. She knew the September minutes were a problem. She was creating a new, fake, Authentic set for him to sign, to cover the $50,000 gap between the real invoice and the fake one. I took the picture, the timestamp on the photo's metadata, compared to the date of the note, was proof of intent to defraud. It was beautiful. I replaced everything, the note, back under the receipt, at the exact same angle, the file folder, perfectly flush. I wiped the doorknob to the study. I left nothing, not a fiber, not a fingerprint, not a trace. I walked back to the mudroom. I was about to open the door, my gloved hand on the knob. I stopped. The porch camera. I'd seen it 100 times. A small, white dome camera, mounted under the eaves, pointing at the side door. Lorraine had installed it. She had sent a photo of my motel door. She was watching me, but she was sloppy. She was looking for me in the past. I was going to give her a new picture to look at. I opened the door. I stepped out, onto the wet stone path. I tripped. I let my body go slack, stumbling forward, catching myself on the railing. I let the baseball cap fall from my head. I looked up, directly into the camera. I let it see my face. I let it see the welt on my cheek, now a sickly, yellowish purple. I let it see me there, at her house, in my gray sweatsuit, looking defeated and pathetic. I put the cap back on, pulled the hood up, and walked away. It was bait. Let her see it. Let her think I was sloppy. Let her think I was a pathetic child, sneaking back to my dad's house to steal… What? A new set of return address labels? Let her think she was in control. Let her think she had me scared, running from motel to motel. Let her think she was the spider, and I was the fly. That night, in my fourth and final motel room, a clean, business-class place with good Wi-Fi, I opened my laptop. I had the video feeds from the house running in 2 small windows on my screen. I had the audio feed from the study on standby. I opened a new document. I was not a lawyer, but I worked with contracts. I understood the language of proof. I ordered a state-approved, notarized affidavit template, a digital download. I began to build the chain of custody for every piece of evidence I had. Exhibit A, photographs of physical assault, dated Dec 8/2147. Exhibit B, voice memo, timestamped Dec 8/2205, detailing assault and witness testimony. Exhibit C, IRS public record, ein mismatch, LM Foundation. Exhibit D, Town Registry, Winter Ridge Evergreen Co., LLC, owner Miles March. Exhibit E, HOA records, forged signature, contract waiver. Exhibit F, photograph of handwritten note, Arden, signed backdated minutes, dated Dec 11/11/34. The list was growing. It was a meticulous, undeniable, structural analysis of her entire rotten life. The gala was in 3 days. Lorraine was busy planning a party. I was busy planning a detonation. The Hartwell Conservatory was a glass palace, a Victorian fantasy of iron and glass set against the black, wintry Vermont sky. Tonight, it was glowing, lit from within by thousands of soft, golden lights. It was Lorraine's stage, and she had spared no expense in dressing the set. Waiters in crisp white jackets moved like ghosts, carrying silver trays of champagne. A string quartet played in the corner, but their music was already being drowned out by the rising, brittle chatter of Winter Ridge's elite. This was Lorraine's curated excess. Ice sculptures dripped slowly onto velvet cloths. Towers of shrimp glistened under spotlights. The air smelled of hothouse lilies, expensive perfume, and money, old, new, and stolen. I arrived through the service entrance. My simple, sleeveless black dress was identical to the catering staff's uniform, which was precisely the point. I had paid $100 for a ticket, but I had no intention of arriving as a guest. My hair was pulled back in a severe, functional knot. My only jewelry was the pen camera, clipped neatly into the neckline of my dress, its lens a single, dark, unblinking eye. I moved through the periphery, a shadow in the noise. I found Arden exactly where I knew he would be, at the coat check. He wasn't working it. He was just standing near it, a man frozen at the scene of his own execution. He looked hunted. His suit was too large. His face was the color of old oatmeal, and his hands were shaking so badly he couldn't accept a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. He was a man with no exit. I moved up beside him, my voice low, not even looking at him. "Arden?" He jumped, a full-body flinch, sloshing champagne onto the floor. "Miss March, Elena, I can't be here. She made me come. She said it would look suspicious if the treasurer didn't show up to the charity's biggest night." "She's right," I said. I looked at him then. His eyes were wide, pleading. "She's given you a role to play. Arden, she expects you to be the grateful, bumbling fool. She expects you to protect her. She expects you to lie." "What do I do?" he whispered, his voice cracking. "She has the papers, the new ones. She'll ruin me." "She already has." "Arden," I said, my voice flat, cold, and final. "You have exactly one move left. Just one." I let him wait. "Tonight, when they ask you, just tell the truth. That's it. It's the only thing she isn't prepared for." I walked away, leaving him by the puddle of spilled champagne. I was halfway across the main floor, heading toward the vendor staging area, when her voice cut through the entire conservatory. "Oh, darling!" The string quartet stopped. The chatter died. 100 heads turned. Lorraine was on the main dais, a small, elevated platform where a podium and microphone were set up. She was holding the microphone, her hand wrapped in a diamond bracelet that looked like a weapon. She was a vision in emerald green silk, her hair a perfect, blonde helmet. Her smile was blinding. She was pointing at me. "Elena, you came! Oh, everyone, look, my stepdaughter. Elena made it." It was masterful, a performance of delighted, surprised motherhood. She was claiming me, absorbing me into her narrative, painting me as the prodigal child, returned to the fold. She was casting me as a supporting player in her show. The applause was polite, confused. I just stood there, letting them look, letting the cameras, the phones, the event videographer find me. I gave a small, neutral nod, and I let my body cam record her, the predator disguised as a proud matriarch. She put the microphone down, her show finished, and was immediately swarmed by the town manager and the bank vice president, all of them laughing, all of them eager to be near her. I continued to the back, near the catering tables. Miles was there, as I knew he would be. He was running point at the vendor station, which meant he was standing awkwardly in a tuxedo that didn't fit, holding a clipboard and looking important. He was in charge of the company he owned, the one that had just billed the HOA $75,000. I moved past him, pretending to look for the restroom. A stack of empty cardboard boxes was piled by the service exit, waiting to be broken down. I saw the shipping label. It was right on top. From Winter Ridge Evergreen Common, LLC. To Hartwell Conservatory, C-Lazo-L. March. Contents: 12. Potted ficus trees, rental. Invoice, $15,000 for 12 rented trees. That was over $1,000 a tree. I knew, because I had checked, that the market rate for the same rental was $4,000, maybe $5,000, total. This wasn't just an overcharge. It was a blatant, sloppy transfer of funds. He was billing the charity triple the market rate, just as he had the HOA. I took my phone, angled it, and photographed the label, Exhibit G. I slipped the phone away and moved toward the dais. The technical station was set up just behind it, a small table with a laptop, a soundboard, and an iPad that was cycling through an anodyne, looping playlist of classical pop fusion. The technician was busy, his back to the table, arguing with a waiter about a power outlet. This was the moment. My hands didn't shake. I walked up to the table. My own phone was already in my hand. In my pocket was a small, pre-loaded USB drive, the one containing my thank you montage, It took less than 5 seconds. Unplug the sound system cable from the iPad's headphone jack, plug it into my phone. I didn't swap the iPad. I bypassed it. The playlist on my phone was already queued. It looked identical to the iPad's, a black screen, a simple music player. The technician, when he looked back, would see a black screen playing music and think nothing. My montage was set to play in exactly 40 minutes, right when Lorraine was scheduled to give her big speech. But I had a backup plan. I had a remote trigger. I blended back into the crowd, positioning myself near the banker. His name was Philip Tide, and he was the vice president of regional lending at Winter Ridge Mutual. His name was circled in red on the seating chart I had photographed. Lorraine was holding court, a champagne flute in her hand. Philip was praising her. "Lorraine, I have to say, this is impressive. Your foundation is the talk of the town. We're always looking to partner with, efficient community leaders." Lorraine lapped it up, her eyes glittering. "Oh, Philip, foundation is such a stuffy word. I just see a need and I fill it. You know, you have to be creative. People get so stuck on bylaws." The pen camera was aimed directly at her. I shifted, as if reaching for a canapé. "It's true," I said, my voice just loud enough to join the circle. "Stag Hollow HOA is lucky to have you. I hear you've been very creative with the reserves." Lorraine's smile tightened, just a fraction. Her eyes went to ice, but Philip laughed, oblivious. "Is that so? Good for you. Lorraine, the regulations on those reserve accounts are a nightmare." Lorraine recovered, placing a hand on Philip's arm. "Philip, darling, reserves are just a number. They're flexible. If the board agrees, and my board always agrees, they trust my efficiency. Reserves are flexible if the board agrees." I had her, on record. My body cam had the audio, the video, and the unimpeachable witness. A hand touched my elbow. I turned. It was Reese. Her face was pale, her beige dress blending into the background. She looked terrified, but resolute. She had been invisible to me, but she had been watching. "Elena," she whispered, her voice a tremor. She didn't look at me, but at a point over my shoulder, her hand came up, as if to fix my dress, and she pressed something small, hard, and cold into my palm, a folded USB drive. "I can't," she whispered. "I'm not like him. I'm not like her. I can't be part of this." I closed my hand over it. "Check the video," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "From the security camera in the study, last Tuesday, 1832. She was gone, melting back into the crowd, just as Miles walked up to her, his face a mask of confusion. I needed to see it. Now. I found a back office, a small, dark room marked conservatory staff. A single laptop was open. Running the check-in software, I didn't care. I plugged the USB into the side port. The file was easy to find. Study cam feed 1210. Last Tuesday. I scrubbed to the timestamp, 1832, 6:32 p.m. The video was from the security camera I had seen, the one on the porch, but this one was inside. Lorraine must have had them installed in the study, too. The quality was grainy, but the audio was sharp. It was Lorraine, Arden, and Miles. Lorraine was holding the new, backdated minutes. "Arden, for God's sake, just sign it," Lorraine's voice snapped. "But, Lorraine, this says the board approved the 75,000. Arden stammered. "The real minutes say 25. "The real minutes," Lorraine said, her voice a low, dangerous purr. "Say whatever I tell them to say. You will sign this, and you will find it in your files. It's just a correction, a typo. You will sign it, or I will call Philip Tidy right now and tell him his treasurer has been forging signatures on conservatory contracts." She had him. She was coaching him, forcing him to re-sign the minutes, using her own forgery as the blackmail. I pulled the USB. My heart was not hammering. It was a cold, precise engine. I walked back out onto the floor. It was time. Lorraine was moving to the dais. The string quartet was finishing. I stood at the back of the room, I took out my personal phone, the one connected to the sound system. I texted Nadia. If I disappeared this second, would the package still go? The gala was loud. I couldn't hear my phone's notification, but I felt the vibration. Nadia's reply, already in motion. The dead man's switch is live. Go burn it down. Elena. The package, my entire affidavit, every piece of evidence, every photo, every file, was set to auto-send to the DA, the state AG, and the IRS in 2 hours, unless I manually stopped it. Lorraine tapped the microphone. The room went quiet. Thank you, she cooed, her face projected onto 2 massive screens on either side of the stage. Thank you all for coming. When I started the Winter Ridge Children's Fund, I pressed the button. My thank you montage began early. By mistake. The classical pop music cut out, replaced by the sharp, metallic click of a keyboard. The 2 massive screens behind Lorraine, the ones showing her perfect, smiling face, flickered. And then, instead of smiling donors, they displayed the bank transfer. A crisp, high-resolution PDF, Stag Hollow HOA, Winter Ridge Evergreen Co., LLC, amount, $75,000. There was a collective gasp. People in the front row turned, confused. Lorraine, who couldn't see the screens behind her, kept smiling, her audio still live. It has been my honor to. The screen changed. It was the backdated PDF of the minutes, the one from Arden, side by side with the real one. The signatures were highlighted in red. The screen changed again. The IRS database, LM Foundation, Inc., side by side with the glossy flyer for the Winter Ridge Children's Fund. Lorraine's smile faltered. She could feel the change in the room. She was losing the audience. She turned, her face a mask of confusion, and saw the screens. She saw the screenshot of her own charity's bylaws, the one I'd highlighted, showing that 0% of funds were legally mandated for distribution. And then, the finale. The screens went dark, and a new video, low quality and shaky, began to play. It was the video from the man in the pink sweater's phone, the video that, an hour ago, someone I'd paid had posted to a public Winter Ridge community blog. The tree, the crash, the glass. The sound was clear. My father's voice. Clean that up. And then Lorraine, walking across the room, her face a mask of brittle amusement, and the sharp, ugly sound of her hand connecting with my cheek. The entire room, 200 people, went dead silent. You could hear the ice melting. Lorraine's face, the real one, not the one on the screen, crumpled. The microphone fell from her hand, hitting the podium with a thud. The phones went up, all of them, not in polite applause, but in recording. They were all filming her, just as they had filmed me. She lunged, a desperate, ugly movement, for the technician's table, for the iPad she thought was controlling the show. She was screaming my name. But I was already gone. I was out the service door, into the cold, clean, December air, before the first police siren, called by Nadia's anonymous tip, had even turned onto the street. The detonation was not a single blast. It was a series of small, controlled charges, firing one after the other, just as I had designed. When the screens went black, the silence in the Hartwell Conservatory was absolute. It was a vacuum. The first to move was the town manager. He did not run. He simply placed his glass on a tray, turned, and walked out the main entrance with the practiced, unhurdled pace of a man who knows he is on a sinking ship. He was already on his phone before he cleared the door. The banker VP, Philip T.D., looked like he had swallowed a pin. He was frozen, his eyes on the spot where the transfer to Miles' company had been displayed. He was calculating, not morality, liability, his own proximity to the blast. He slowly, methodically, began to back away from the dais. Then the room fractured. Arden was the first weak point to collapse. He was immediately surrounded by his fellow HOA board members, a small, furious cluster by the coat check. What the hell was that? Arden? A tall woman hissed. $75,000? To Miles? Arden was shaking so violently he looked like he might vibrate apart. He looked at Lorraine, who was still on the dais, paralyzed. He looked at the angry faces of his neighbors. He had nowhere left to hide. She told me to," he stammered, the words tumbling out. "She told me to move the money. She said it was a temporary reassignment, to cover the gala costs. She said the donations would pay it back. She told me to." "You signed the invoice." "She made me." Arden's voice cracked, rising to a squeak. "She blackmailed me. She forged my name on the conservatory contract, the waiver, and said she'd ruin me if I didn't sign the new minutes." The fuse had been lit. The first charge had blown. I had already stepped back into the service corridor, a shadow in the archway, my pen camera still recording. A hand grabbed my bicep, yanking me fully into the darkness of the hallway. It was Miles. His face was a blotchy, furious red. His tuxedo was twisted. He reeked of champagne and panic. "You," he hissed, his voice thick. "You ruined everything." I just looked at him. My camera was aimed at his eyes. I showed them. "She saved him," he spat, his hand tightening, his knuckles white. "She saved this family. He was a wreck after your mother. He was nothing. She put him back together. She saved Dad." It was the company line, the story she had fed him, the lie he had built his entire parasitic life upon. I didn't try to pull away. I just asked the question. "From what?" He stared. The word just hung in the air between us. From what? He had no answer. His anger, so hot a second ago, sputtered out, leaving only a hollow, pathetic confusion. His grip loosened. "From what, Miles?" He couldn't answer. I heard the sound of the main doors opening again. Sirens. They were close. I stepped back into the room, pulling my arm free from his slackened grip. 2 uniformed Winter Ridge police officers stood in the doorway. The chatter, which had risen to a roar, died instantly. Lorraine saw them. This was her stage. This was her next performance. The terror on her face vanished, replaced by a mask of perfect calculated victimhood. She pointed a shaking diamond-covered finger at me. Officer, thank God! Arrest her!" The officers, one older, one younger, moved into the room. The older one, Kincaid, had a face like worn leather. He had been the resource officer at my high school. He knew this town. He knew my father. "That woman!" Lorraine shrieked, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. She hacked my presentation. Digital trespass. She's unstable. She's been stalking me. She attacked me at my home. She's obsessed." Kincaid walked toward me. He didn't look at Lorraine. He looked at me. His gaze was neutral, taking in the black dress, the pen camera, and the dark, fading bruise on my left cheek. "Elena March?" he said, his voice flat. "Hello, Officer Kincaid?" I said. "She's lying," Lorraine cried, moving toward him. She's trying to extort me. She's jealous. Arrest her for harassment." Kincaid held up one hand, a silent stop, without even looking at her. His eyes were on me. "Mrs. March is accusing you of digital trespass. What's your side of this, Elena?" I didn't answer. I reached into the simple, black clutch I'd carried. "My side, officer," I said, my voice clear and carrying in the quiet room, "is a formal criminal complaint." I pulled out a packet, a thick, neat stack of papers. "This is my notarized affidavit, detailing the assault that occurred on December 8th at my father's home at the hands of Lorraine March. The assault that left this mark on my face. The assault you all just watched on those screens." I handed him the packet. "This," I said, handing him a second, smaller packet, "is a copy of the original video of that assault, provided by a witness. This is a public records pull from the town clerk, detailing the EIN mismatch between the Winter Ridge Children's Fund and the LM Foundation, Inc." I handed him the final, thickest packet. "And this contains the forged HOA documents, the vendor invoices from Winter Ridge Evergreen County, owned by Miles March, and the bank transfer requests. I am formally requesting a full property line report for the Stag Hollow HOA reserves and an investigation into felony embezzlement, fraud, and forgery. Kincaid took the packets. His face remained neutral, but his grip tightened. He was no longer a beat cop at a party. He was an officer of the court, receiving a chain of evidence. Lorraine saw it. She saw the packets. She saw the word embezzlement. She saw her narrative collapsing. She pivoted. The anger and accusation dissolved into a storm of tears. It was a masterful, immediate downpour. "Oh my God," she wept, her body sagging, her hands flying to her face. She's insane. She's violent. She attacked me." She dropped her left hand, revealing her right wrist. It was red, a dark, ugly bruise already blooming just below the diamond bracelet. A bruise that had not been there when she was on the dais. A bruise that was perfectly, physically, located where a person would grab their own arm. She attacked me in the corridor," she sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "When she ran out, she grabbed me. She said she would kill me. She's violent. She's always been violent." The crowd murmured. Doubt, confusion. It was a masterful gambit. "That's a lie." The voice was quiet, but it was sharp. "Reese." She was standing, trembling, by a table of half-eaten shrimp. Miles looked at her, his face ashen. "Reese, shut up." "No," she said. Her voice was shaking, but it was set. She looked at Officer Kincaid. "That's a lie. I was watching. Elena never went near her. She's been standing right there. That bruise. Lorraine didn't have that 5 minutes ago." "She's lying for her," Lorraine shrieked, her tears instantly drying in her fury. "They're in it together. They're trying to destroy me." Reese shook her head, and tears started streaming down her own face. "I'm not lying, and I have proof. She's been paranoid for days. She knew this gala was a risk." Reese held up her phone. "She made us rehearse. She made Miles and me rehearse what to say if anyone asked about the money. She told us to say Elena was unstable and jealous." Reese's eyes met mine, just for a second, a silent apology. She looked back at Kincaid. "I filmed the rehearsal," she whispered, but the whole room heard her. "From last Tuesday, in the study, I filmed her coaching Arden on how to re-sign the minutes, on how to lie. I have it right here." The room inhaled. The structure was breaking. "She's right." A new voice, sharp as glass, cut through the room. A woman in a dark green parka, her face a mask of cold fury, was pushing through the crowd. She marched right up to Arden, who looked like he was about to faint. "Arden, you spineless idiot," she snapped. It was Arden's spouse. That woman," she said, jabbing a finger at Lorraine, "has been harassing my husband for weeks." She wasn't defending him. She was stating a fact. "I am the actual board secretary," she announced to the room, and to Officer Kincaid. "Arden has the treasurer title, but I keep the minutes. I was at home, printing the agenda for Tuesday's meeting, when Arden called me, crying, saying she was blackmailing him. She was holding a binder, a real, worn, black 3-ring binder. She slammed it onto a table. "Here," she said, "are the actual, signed, original meeting minutes from September, the ones I took and I had notarized, approving a $25,000 expenditure for storm cleanup, not 75. She pulled out a printed email. "And here is the email from Mrs. March from 2 days ago, asking me to please correct the obvious typo in the minutes before the board meeting. I told her to go to hell." It was over. The lies were dead. The money was tracked. The assaults were witnessed. And then the front doors opened again. It was my father. He was disoriented, his hair a mess, his feet in house slippers. He must have heard the sirens, seen the flashing lights, and walked over from the house. He looked smaller than I had ever remembered him. a frail, confused man in a rumpled flannel shirt. He was clutching a folded white envelope in his right hand. Lorraine saw him. It was her last, desperate, final play. She ran to him, the perfect, weeping victim. She wrapped herself around him like ivy, burying her face in his chest. Graham, thank God. You're here, she sobbed, her voice muffled against his shirt. Tell them she's lying. Tell them how she's always been jealous, how she's always hated me. Tell them she's unstable. Tell them, Graham, tell them. He just stood there, his arms at his sides, her arms wrapped around his torso. He looked over her head, over her perfect, blonde, sobbing hair. He looked at me. His eyes were not angry. They were not confused. They were just clear. For the first time in a decade, they were clear. He didn't speak. He just slowly, deliberately, with a shaky hand, unfolded the white envelope he was clutching. Graham, Lorraine whispered, pulling back, her eyes wide with a new dawning horror. What? What is that? I found this, my father said. His voice was rusty, quiet, but it carried in the dead silent, glass-walled room. It was in my golf bag, in the side pocket. I'd forgotten I'd put it there. He held up the letter, heavy, cream-colored, legal letterhead. It's from Mr. Abernathy, he said. My lawyer, he paused. My original lawyer. Lorraine's hands, which had been wrapped around him, went limp. She stepped back. He sent it to the house, my father continued, his voice gaining a small, strange strength. I never saw it. I guess you didn't show it to me, Lorraine, but he sent a copy to the club. He was worried. He held the letter, his hand shaking, and he read from it. Dear Graham, he read, his voice clear. I am writing to formally reiterate my concerns regarding the recent codicil you were presented with. As your legal counsel for 30 years, I must advise you that, in my opinion, you are a vulnerable client. He looked up from the page, his eyes locking on Lorraine's. And I have deep professional reservations regarding undue influence and coercive control in your household. He lowered the letter. He looked at the woman in the green dress, the woman who had just been clinging to him. He's been my lawyer for 30 years, Lorraine, my father said, his voice quiet, a simple statement of fact. The final charge had blown. The entire rotten structure had just come down. The walk from the conservatory was the longest 100 yards of my life. Officer Kincaid had taken Lorraine, gently but firmly, to his patrol car for a formal statement, separating her from the crowd, from her victims, and from my father. She had not gone quietly, but she had gone. Reese and Arden were giving their own statements to the other officer, the words tumbling out of them in a flood of terrified relief. I didn't stay. My work there was done. The dead man's switch on Nadia's server was disarmed. The affidavit was filed. The rest was just procedure. My father was standing by the curb, still in his slippers, the lawyer's letter clutched in his hand. He looked lost. Dad, I said. He looked at me, his eyes clear but exhausted. The house, he said. Let's go to the house. I walked him across the lawn. He was unsteady, and I let him take my arm. It was the first time in years he had leaned on me. I didn't have to use the snowflake key. The front door was unlocked. The house was impossibly quiet. The fake cinnamon scent was still thick in the air, a cloying, chemical reminder of the woman who had just been escorted away. My father walked, as if by instinct, to his study. I followed. He didn't turn on the main overhead light, just the green-shaded lamp on his desk. The room was cast in shadows. He sat, heavily, in his leather chair. He set Mr. Abernathy's letter on the blotter, as if it were a shield. He didn't know what to do next. He was a man whose entire reality had been dismantled in less than an hour. He had been a passenger in his own life, and the driver had just been arrested. I stood on the other side of the desk. My job wasn't finished. The glass was swept, but the stain was still there. Dad, I said, my voice quiet. A few days ago, when I was here, I left something. I pulled my phone from my clutch. I opened my audio files. I had one labeled Study Audio Trigger. It was the file from the underdesk recorder, the one I had retrieved after she'd triggered the sound alert. I pressed play. I kept the volume low. The room filled with her voice, not her public, shrieking, gala voice, not her venomous, whispering, don't bleed on the rug voice. This was her working voice. Graham L. March. The audio was clear. My recorder had been perfect. Graham L. March. No, that's too fast. He loops the G. There was the sound of a pen on paper, a scribble. Graham L. March. Tap, tap, yes, that's it. A pause. Graham L. March. Tap, tap. Another scribble. Graham L. March. Tap, tap. My father winced. It was a physical, violent flinch, as if he'd been struck. He stared at the phone. He was listening to a forgery in progress. He was listening to his wife practicing his identity, perfecting the cadence of his signature, right down to the two small, impatient taps he always made with the pen when he was finished. I stopped the recording. He didn't look at me. He looked at his own hands, resting on the desk. I don't read well anymore, he whispered. It was a confession, the one he'd been holding back for years. At night, the words, they get fuzzy, the fine print. She said it was just stress. She said she would simplify the papers. She said she was just protecting us, protecting me. She would read them and just tell me where to sign. He looked up, his eyes hollow. She said she was making friends for us, the galas, the parties, the foundation. I hated it, but she said it was how it was done. She said we needed influence to be safe. I thought, his voice broke. I thought she was just building a life for us. She was, I said, my voice soft. Just not with you. She was building it for herself. I pulled up the diagram on my phone, the one from the motel, the map of the rot. I turned the phone around and slid it across the desk. This is the life, Dad. The HOA money. The $75,000. It was a landscaping fee paid to a company called Winter Ridge Evergreen. That company is owned by Miles. That money was then donated to the Winter Ridge Children's Fund, which is a fake name for the LM Foundation. And that foundation, it was just a funnel, a way to get the money to Stag Hollow Holdings, LP. That's her vault, Dad, the friends she was making. They were shell companies. He stared at the screen, at the lines and arrows, as if it were a language he couldn't comprehend. But he could. I need to see the file cabinet, I said. He nodded, numb. I went to the cabinet. It was unlocked. I knew where to look. Not under Will, not under Lorraine. I pulled the thick hanging folder labeled Renovation Receipts. It was there, just as I'd seen it, buried under an invoice for new pool equipment from 2 years ago, an old blue-backed legal document, a post-nuptial. I unfolded it. I read the key phrase aloud, into the quiet, dark room. In the event of undue personal or professional stress, or in the event of cognitive decline or incapacitation, as determined by a spouse-chosen physician, all financial and legal authorities, all trust controls, are to be temporarily transferred to Lorraine March for the protection of the estate. Stress, my father whispered. She was always telling me I was stressed, that I was confused, that I was forgetting things. She said that paper was just in case I got sick, like your mother. She said it was to protect me. It was to disarm you, I said. And she used it. I put the post-nup on the desk, next to the lawyer's letter. She had you declared under stress, and then she brought in the codicil, the one on the desk, the one from 2 days ago. His eyes watered. A single hot tear traced a path down his cheek. I never signed it. Elena, I swear, she asked me to, after you left, after the tree. She said you were trying to take the house. She said you were unstable. She said we had to protect ourselves. I told her I wanted to talk to Abernathy. I told her no. I never signed it. I know, I said. I pulled the codicil from the center of the blotter. You didn't sign this one. I walked over to the small, cluttered bookshelf by the door. It was where he kept his old, framed photos. His father, my mother, and a small, silver frame of him, 20 years ago, holding up a massive, gleaming fish. A fishing license was tucked into the corner of the frame. The photo faded, the signature large and proud. I took the frame. I brought it back to the desk. I laid the codicil next to it. Look, I said. He looked at the broad, confident, looping G on his fishing license, and he looked at the cramped, meticulous, tap-tap forgery on the codicil, the one Lorraine had practiced. It didn't match. It wasn't even close. It was a forgery born of contempt, assuming no one would ever look closely. Oh, God, he breathed, the sound a ragged exhalation. Oh, God, Elena. A frantic banging on the study door made us both jump. It wasn't Lorraine. The door flew open. Miles. He was trembling, his face white, his tuxedo stained. He looked from me to my father and back to me. He was cornered. The cops, he stammered. Reese, she gave them her phone. She gave them the video, the one of Lorraine and Arden. They're taking her to the station. They're talking about fraud. He was looking for an exit, for a new person to give him orders. She told me I'd own this town, he whispered, the confession a pathetic, bubbling mess. She said the money was just paper, that it was our right, that you were trying to steal it all. She said I just had to be the man of the house. She said I'd be in charge of everything, the holdings company, everything. I stepped toward him. I felt no sympathy. He was a weak, greedy, spineless creature, but he was a useful one. You're going to be, I said, my voice like ice. He blinked. What? You're going to be in charge. Right now. I pointed to my father's guest chair. Sit. Open your laptop. I don't. Now, Miles. Or you can walk out that door and Officer Kincaid can add you to the list. He scrambled, pulling a sleek, thin laptop from a bag I hadn't even noticed. He sat. He opened it. He was shaking so hard he could barely type his password. You are going to do 3 things, I said, standing over him. 1, you are going to email every single member of the Stag Hollow HOA board, the real ones. Arden's wife has the list. What do I say? You are going to attach the authentic minutes from September, the $25,000 ones. You are going to attach the $75,000 invoice from your company, and you are going to write, I am resigning as a vendor, effective immediately, and will be returning the $50,000 overpayment by tomorrow. Am I clear? He nodded, his eyes wide, his fingers flying. 2, you are going to email your new friends at Stag Hollow Holdings, LP, and LM Foundation, and you are going to tender your resignation from the board of both, effective immediately. He just nodded, typing. 3, you are going to sign a full confession, detailing every transaction, and email it to Reese. You are going to tell her she has your permission to give it to the police. You are going to tell her you're sorry. And you are going to tell her you're doing it to make it right. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. Will that help? It will help her, I said. Send them now. He clicked send on 3 separate emails, a digital act of self-immolation. Now get out, I said. He scrambled, grabbing his laptop, and fled the room, leaving the scent of his panic in the air. The study was quiet again. My father looked at me, his face a ruin of shame and something else, a small, dark, flicker of the man he used to be. He looked at the papers on his desk, the lawyer's letter, the post-nup, the forged codicil. "I told you to clean it up," he whispered. I met his gaze. "I am?" A new sound. This time, it was her. Not banging, just a sweet light, tapping on the closed study door. "Graham?" Her voice, an instrument of pure weaponized charm, sweetness and steel. "Graham, darling, are you in there? The police are confused. It's just a misunderstanding. That officer, Kincaid, he let me come back and find my purse." A lie. She had talked her way back. She was a virus. "Graham, darling, you're confused. I know you are. That letter from Abernathy, it's just old. He's an old man. He doesn't understand our life. Let me in. Let me fix it." My father's hand started to move toward the doorknob. I put my hand over his. I picked up my phone from the desk. I turned on the audio recorder. I set it on the blotter, the small red light glowing. "Elena," my father whispered, his eyes wide. "It's time, Dad," I said. "Let's let her fix it." I slid my hand off his, walked to the door, and unlocked it. She glided in. It was not the entrance of a woman who had been caught, but of a performer stepping onto her favorite stage. This study was her room. It was the room where she had held her whispered, coercive meetings. It was the room where she had practiced his signature. It was the room where she always won. She did not look at me. Her eyes were locked on my father, her face a mask of soft, profound, concerned love. "Graham, darling," she breathed, her voice a velvet tremor. She moved toward the desk, her hands slightly outstretched, a gesture of pure, angelic supplication. "Thank God. You're safe. She locked the door? I heard shouting." Her eyes flicked, just once, to my phone on the desk blotter. The small red light of the audio recorder glowing. She saw it. And she smiled anyway. It was a small, dismissive, almost pitying smile. She truly, deeply, believed in her own charisma. She believed it was a superpower, capable of bending reality, and she was certain, after a decade of unchallenged success, that we were immune to it. "Elena, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice a performance for my father. "You're frightening him. Look at him. He's confused. Darling, Graham, it's all right. I'm here now." "He's not confused. Lorraine," I said. My voice was low, devoid of emotion. "You are confused," she repeated, her voice hardening, the sweetness dropping away as she turned to my father. She tapped the forged codicil on the desk. "Graham, we signed this, remember? To protect us. From her. It's valid. It's done." "It's not valid," I said. She laughed, a short, sharp, ugly bark. "Oh, Elena, darling, you are a product manager. I am a foundation director. We have lawyers. It's valid." "I looked up the statute," I said, my voice as flat and dry as a clinical report. "Vermont Statute, Title 14, Section 105, Execution of Wills. A valid codicil, or a will, requires the signature of the testator, my father, in the presence of 2 or more credible, disinterested witnesses." "We had witnesses," she snapped, her eyes flashing. "Who?" I asked. "Miles? Your sister? Visiting from Florida?" Section 107 defines disinterested. A witness cannot be a family member, and they cannot be a financial beneficiary of the document they are witnessing. This document, which names you as sole executor, transfers the house to you, and grants you full power of attorney, has no valid witnesses. It's just a piece of paper. A piece of paper you practiced forging. "You are insane," she hissed, her mask of charm finally dissolving into pure reptilian rage. "Am I?" I said. I picked up my phone. "Let's review the rehearsal." I tapped the screen, the large dark television screen on the study wall. the one Lorraine used for her gala slideshows and to review her curated family videos, flickered to life. I was screen mirroring. Reese's USB file. The grainy footage from the internal security camera filled the screen. The study, Arden, pale and sweating, Miles, shifting on his feet, and Lorraine, vibrant and in command. On the screen, Lorraine's voice, sharp and clear. "Arden, for God's sake, just sign it. It's just a piece of paper." My father stood up. He was leaning on the desk, his knuckles white, his eyes fixed on the screen. He was watching his wife, 3 days ago, committing a state-level felony in the very room where he now stood. On the screen, Arden's face, a mask of terror. "But, Lorraine, this says the board approved the 75,000. The real minutes say 25. On the screen, Lorraine's voice, a low, dangerous purr. "The real minutes say whatever I tell them to say. You will sign this, or I will call Philip Teedy right now and tell him his treasurer has been forging signatures on conservatory contracts." "Stop it!" Lorraine shrieked. It was a raw, ugly sound. She lunged for my phone, but I held it aloft. "That's not real. That's a deep fake. You fabricated that. You're trying to frame me. Graham, she's framing me." "A deep fake," I said, my voice calm. "That's a bold claim. But a deep fake can't replicate a voicemail, can it?" I tapped another file. I didn't need the TV. I just let the audio play from my phone's speaker. "You left this for Arden earlier tonight," I said. "Right after the gala exploded. You were trying to get your stories straight. You were a little frantic." Her voice, desperate and hissing, filled the quiet room. "Arden, you idiot, pick up. You just needed to stick to the script. It was a typo, a correction. You were authorized to re-sign the minutes. Call me back and say those words. It was a correction. Say it." The same cadence, the same phrases, the same words. Lorraine's face was white. Her mouth was open. She had no more rhetoric. She was just caught. The room was silent, save for the hum of the TV screen, which now showed the frozen, terrified face of Arden Pike. My father sat back down, a slow, heavy collapse into his leather chair. He looked at Lorraine, truly looked at her, as if he were seeing her for the first time in a decade. He asked one question. His voice was low, rusty, and rough. "Did you slap my daughter?" Lorraine stared at him. The question, after the talk of fraud, forgery, and millions, was so simple, so human. It took her by surprise. And the most incredible, horrifying thing happened. She laughed. It was the laugh. It was the same bright, brittle, performative laugh she had used by the tree. The same dismissive, "You're being so dramatic" sound. She couldn't help herself. The accusation was, to her, so absurdly sentimental, so beside the point, that it was funny. "Oh, Graham," she tittered, her composure returning, believing this was the pivot she needed, a pivot back to familiar ground. "Don't be ridiculous." She was hysterical. She ruined a $1,200 ornament. I tapped her, to snap her out of it. My father's face went completely, terrifyingly blank. I reached into the pocket of my black dress. I pulled out the broken silver star from the mantel. It was heavy, its edges sharp. I set it on the desk, in front of my father. "This was the one that survived," I said. He looked at it. His right hand was resting on the desk blotter, his palm flat. Right beside his hand was a small, deep, crescent-shaped nick in the old wood. A gouge. He had done it years ago, opening a box with a pocket knife. He always rested his hand there. He looked at the nick in the wood. He looked at the broken, jagged edge of the silver star. He didn't have to touch it. He could see it. The edge of the star fit the gouge in the desk. It was a perfect negative match. It was the spot on the mantel where the star had rested, the spot where his palm rested now. It was a map, a connection, the broken star, the broken trust, the broken family. His eyes, when he lifted them, were no longer soft. They were not confused. They were hard. They were the eyes of the man I remembered. We heard them then. Sirens. They were not the local police this time. This was different. A deeper, more insistent wail, coming up the long, private drive. "What is that?" Lorraine whispered, her confidence finally, truly, breaking. "I think that's the state attorney general," I said, my voice quiet. When Nadia's dead man's switch expired, the package didn't just go to the local DA. It went to the state fraud division. It seems Reese's call to the hotline was just a cherry on top. Lorraine's eyes darted around the room. She was an animal, trapped. She was looking for her exit, her last move. She lunged. Not for the door, for the desk, for the file cabinet. "The ledger," she hissed, grabbing for the desk drawer where she kept the LM Foundation checkbook, her private parallel accounts. "The donor list." "It's already gone," I said. I held up my phone, my camera roll open. I photographed every page. Lorraine, every check, every transfer. It's all in the affidavit. Nadia has the originals. The AG has the copies. It's all clean. The study door opened. It was Miles. He looked like a ghost. He wasn't frantic anymore. He was just empty. He was a man who had been hollowed out. He walked to the desk, his signature shaking so badly he could barely hold the paper. He didn't look at his mother. He looked at my father. He placed a single printed sheet on the desk blotter. It was the email he had just sent. His resignation from Winterridge Evergreen Com LLC. "It's done," he whispered, and he backed out of the room. Lorraine looked at the resignation. She looked at my father, who was staring at the broken star. She had one weapon left. "She wants him for his money," she hissed, her voice a low, venomous poison. She pointed at me, her finger trembling with rage. This has never been about a slap. This has never been about a foundation. This is about the will. She's jealous. She wants the house. She wants his money." I didn't say a word. I just slid the lawyer's letter, Mr. Abernathy's letter, across the desk. Next to it, I placed a small, folded piece of paper from my clutch. "Dad," I said, "that's Mr. Abernathy's letter, warning you. And this is a list of genuine, vetted, independent geriatric specialists and estate guardians. You can choose. You can call Mr. Abernathy. You can call any one of them. It's your choice." Choice. The word hung in the air. The one thing she had never given him. Lorraine saw the list. She saw my father's hand move toward it. She saw, finally, that she had lost. She was no longer the executor. She was no longer the wife. She was just a criminal in a very expensive dress. She lunged for the study door. They were already there. Not Officer Kincaid, two new faces, dark suits, calm, tired eyes, state investigators. Kincaid was behind them, his face grim. He had, indeed, let her find her purse, and in doing so, had led her right into the trap. Lorraine stopped. She was cornered. Her face crumpled. She pivoted, one last, desperate time, to tears, a full body, racking. "I'm the victim," sob. "Oh, officers. Thank God." She wept, her hands clutching at her pearls. "My stepdaughter, she's holding us hostage. She's crazy. It didn't work. It worked on bank VPs. It worked on neighbors. It had worked, for 10 years, on my father. It does not work on state fraud investigators. The lead investigator, a tall woman with her hair in a severe bun, just looked at her, her face impassive. "Mrs. March, we need you to come with us." We need your statements," the other officer said, looking at me and my father. "Of course," I said. I had been waiting. I reached into my black clutch. I pulled out the pen camera, my body cam. I pulled out the small, folded USB from Reese. I handed them, along with the printed, signed, and notarized copy of the affidavit, to the lead investigator. "Here is my statement," I said. "It's all there. The body cam footage of the gala, the assault video, the security footage of the conspiracy to commit fraud, the bank records, the forged documents, the audio recordings. The chain was complete. The evidence was transferred." Lorraine's tears stopped. Her mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. She had, finally, run out of words. The lead investigator, the woman with the severe bun, worked with a cold, relentless clarity. She stood in my father's study, but it was her courtroom now. She used my affidavit as a roadmap, walking my father through the transactions, her voice a flat, clinical monotone. "Mrs. March used the Stag Hollow HOA, your HOA, Mr. March, as a slush fund. She initiated an illegal transfer of $75,000, approved via a forged signature from Mr. Pike to a vendor, Winterridge Evergreen, LLC. "That's Miles," my father whispered. "That's Miles," the investigator affirmed, not missing a beat. From there, the funds were laundered as gala expenses and donations into a 501c3 shell, the LM Foundation, which then funneled the money, tax-free, into a private brokerage account, Stag Hollow Holdings, a limited partnership in her name. She wasn't just stealing from your neighbors, sir. She was building a personal, untaxed hedge fund with their money. In the kitchen, the other investigator was taking Arden's formal statement. We could hear the low murmur of his voice, the frantic, high-pitched cadence of a man trading his last shred of dignity for immunity. He was trembling, we were told, but he signed every page. He was resolute in his new, terrified honesty. The consequences rippled outward, the other dominoes falling just as I had planned. Philip Tidey, the banker VP, made his move from the safety of his own home. At 11:03 p.m., an email arrived in the investigator's inbox. It was a forwarded copy of a suspicious activity report, a SAR, that Philip had drafted 4 days ago but never sent. The report detailed his deep concerns about the irregular and high-velocity transfers from the LM Foundation. Now, he sent it. He was covering his tracks, offering up the head of his former social prize. Reese, from a secure link, transferred the complete, high-resolution video file of the rehearsal at Miles from his own laptop, forwarded the internal, fabricated invoices that Lorraine had made him create, adding a single, pathetic line. "She told me to, I am cooperating fully." The paper trail was no longer a trail. It was a superhighway, and every lane led directly to Lorraine. My father sat at his desk, the theater of his own life now reduced to this one, small, wood-paneled room. He looked at the list of doctors I had given him. He looked at Mr. Abernathy's letter. He picked up his phone. His voice was steady, stronger than I had heard it in a decade. He put it on speaker. A sleepy, gruff voice answered on the fourth ring. "Abernathy." "Arthur," my father said. "It's Graham March. I apologize for the hour." The voice on the other end was instantly awake, the fog of sleep replaced by a sharp, legal clarity. "Graham? My God, are you all right? I've been worried. I sent a letter." "I got the letter, Arthur," my father said. "I'm looking at it right now, and I am not all right. She forged a codicil. I've been a fool. Graham, listen to me." "No, Arthur. You listen to me," my father said, and I saw the man he was, the man who had built an empire, surface for a single, brilliant moment. "I need you to revoke a codicil, the one from last week, and I need you to reestablish my original trust protections, the ones my daughter and I are beneficiaries of, not her, effective immediately. I want her name off of everything, my house, my accounts, my health directive, everything." "I'll be there at 8 a.m., Abernathy said. "Don't sign anything. Don't say anything else." "I won't," my father said, and he hung up. Lorraine was still standing by the door, the investigators on either side of her. She was a statue of silken rage. She had heard the call. She had heard her entire future, her entire 10-year investment, be incinerated in a 30-second phone call. She tried one final gambit. She looked at my father, her eyes not with tears, but with a cold, pure, venomous pity. "You'll be alone," she whispered, her voice a rasp. "That old man, your daughter, they won't be here. She'll leave. You'll be a sick, old man in an empty house. You'll be alone without me." My father looked at her. He looked at the woman he had, perhaps, once loved, the woman who had practiced his signature and laughed at his daughter's assault. Then he looked at me. "No, I won't," he said. The lead investigator had been listening. She had shown a patience I did not possess, but now her work was done. "Mrs. March," she said, her voice final. She produced a folded document. "This is a search warrant for all electronic and paper records tied to the LM Foundation, Stag Hollow Holdings, and the Winter Ridge Children's Fund. We will be taking your computers, your tablets, and your phones." One officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, we need you to place your hands behind your back." Lorraine's lips, the ones that had always had an answer, a laugh, or a lie, finally stopped moving. They just hung open. A silent, dark O of disbelief. The investigator looked down at the desk, at the affidavit, at the broken, silver star I had left. She picked it up, careful not to touch the edges. "This item," she said, holding it up in the lamplight, "is listed in your affidavit. Miss March, the star from the top of the tree." "Yes," I said. "The video clip that was posted online tonight, the one from the gala, it's grainy," she said, more to herself than to me. "But this is a physical object. It places you and her at the exact moment of violence. It's a photographic reference. It shatters her claim, the one she made at the gala, that you attacked her. The angles are all wrong for her story." She dropped it into an evidence bag, a small piece of tin and glass that had just toppled an empire. I turned to my father. The investigators were guiding Lorraine out of the room, her movements stiff, puppet-like. "Dad," I said, my voice calm, "that list of doctors, they're all independent. They're all at the university hospital. Would you like me to call? To schedule a cognitive screening you trust, not hers?" He looked at the list. He looked at me. He nodded, a small, tired, but definite movement. His choice, restored. The click was loud in the sudden, impossible quiet of the house. The sound of handcuffs. Lorraine was gone. The front door closed. My father turned to me. The study was dark. Save for the single desk lamp, the room smelled of old tobacco, pine cleaner, and now, ozone, the smell of a war being over. "You cleaned it up," he said. His voice was just a whisper. "Yes," I answered. I looked around the room. I could see the mantel from here. The camera I had planted, the one in the new, artificial garland, was still there. Its tiny lens a dark, silent witness. The new, smaller fur, the one Lorraine had bought to replace the one I'd ruined, stood in the corner, its light steady, its base perfectly, rigidly secured. The camera that had once filmed her curated perfection was now recording only reality, the clean, quiet, empty room. And for the first time in that house, no one was telling me to pick up the pieces. Outside, the first real snow of the season began to fall. Not the cold, hard rain, but thick, soft, white flakes, silencing the town, covering the driveway, covering the black and white patrol car as its door shut with a final solid thud. The red and blue lights washed over the study window. Once, twice, and then they were gone. I saw the snowflake key, my old house key, still on the desk where I'd left it from my bag. I picked it up. I didn't pocket it. I set it down, gently, on my father's blotter, next to the list of doctors, a relic, an artifact, a key to a house that no longer existed. I slid the study door closed. I stood in the hallway, the house silent around me. I looked at my left hand, the one that had been cut. The superglue was gone, but a thin, white scar, pale and clean, remained. I walked to the desk, in the dark, and I placed my palm flat against the cooled wood. I felt the small, crescent-shaped nick, the one that the broken star had fit, the gouge in the wood, and the scar on my palm. They were partners. My voice was barely above a breath, for no one but me. All clean? Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from, so please drop a comment below so we can chat and share our thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and if you want to support us, please hit that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.